Welcome to Dear Feet. I'm Jess.
And I'm Renee.
And we're the Deerfoot Sisters.
So this week we're going to be talking about a topic that's a bit sensitive. So we just wanted to let you guys know up front, if you want to sit this episode out, we totally understand. But we're going to be talking about experiences with sexual assault and sexual harassment, including some personal experiences. So we think it's important that these stories be told and heard, but we understand if, you need some time to come to terms with what's going to be talked about before you listen to this episode. And if you are someone who is not yet an adult, meaning you're under 18, check with your parents or maybe sit this one out. If you are a parent who has girls who are younger, maybe in the teenage range, you could maybe listen with or listen ahead of time and talk through some of the issues with them as well.
Okay. Very good.
Okay.
So we're going to start with some statistics.
Yes. So I think a lot of people know or have heard that rape is a highly underreported crime. So I think we had some statistics, right, Jess, from the rape and incest. What was it? Oh, you didn't write down the whole thing?
Oh, no. I thought you were just reading it.
Oh.
So it was saying that out of every 1,000 sexual assaults, only 230 are reported. And to compare it to some other violent crimes, for robberies, it's 619 out of every 1,000 are reported. And for assault and battery, it's 627 out of every 1,000 are reported. So it's just showing that sexual assault is a crime that tends to go unreported. And I think we'll talk about some of the issues of why that happens later in the episode.
Yeah, some reasons why people might not want to report or fail to report, or maybe they do report but they get dismissed. So we can talk about all of those different issues. So yeah, that was RAINN is the website, and I'm just trying to remember what their name stands for.
It was like network or something.
Yeah, it's the rape. I think it's the rape abuse. I couldn't remember what the A was. Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. So they are the nation's largest anti-sexual violence organization. So if you have been affected by any of those horrific things, you could probably reach out to them and find some resources for support.
And then some other information from the National Sexual Violence Resource Center. These were from 2015. Would be that 1 in 5 women will be raped at some point in their life.
Which is really startling if you think about it. 20% of all women. So, I mean, everyone knows at least 5 women. Think about your mother, your grandmother, your sisters, your co-workers, your friends, your cousins. And then to think 1 in 5 of them is going to be impacted by rape, it's pretty severe.
Yes. We're not really going to touch too much on childhood sexual abuse, but the statistics are even worse. Like, it's 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused before they turn 18.
Right.
So I know we've heard that a lot too. And also it was saying that most of the women, about 80% of them, know the person who assaulted them.
Right.
And then also New York extended their statute of limitations for 2nd and 3rd degree rape.
Right.
So it used to be 5 years, and now it's 20 years for 2nd degree and 10 years for 3rd degree.
Right.
So I think that's just like a nice, not nice, but...
I mean, I think it's overdue, but it's important. But we can talk a little bit more about that later, too. I'll talk about that a little bit later, too. Your coaster. Yeah, so obviously, I watch Law & Order, SVU a lot, and they're in New York, so there's been times where, you'll have a survivor come forward, and then they'll be like, well, when did this happen? And they'll be like, oh, I'm so sorry. I remember one episode, it was it had happened 5 years on a month before. So if the girl had come forward even a month earlier, they would have been able to prosecute. But since it was too late, and then it's what is that really saying to the victims? Sorry, too late. Should have thought of this earlier. So pretty tough. But so that's a good move on New York's part to extend those for those 2 crimes. And then the rape in the 1st degree in New York has no statute of limitations. So that's why they didn't extend it, because it already didn't have one.
Right. All right.
So I think we're going to move on to a story of mine. I don't even want to call it a story. a recounting of a sexual assault that I experienced. A lot of you may have seen this before on Facebook.
Sorry.
But, those pesky algorithms, not everybody sees everything. So, again, like I said, this is really, this is a hard story to tell, and I think it's a hard story to hear, but I do think it's important. So I had already written this out for a Facebook post, so I'm going to just read through it because it's a little easier than trying to talk through it, impromptu. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. When I was 17 years old, I worked as a waitress. There was a cook at the restaurant who had a major crush on me. I was never that interested in him. He was a lot older than me and not really my type. But I was 17 and I was flirty. One night he asked me to hang out after closing the restaurant. We had spent time together outside of work before, once or twice. It was always platonic, a quick drive here, an errand there. Nothing untoward ever transpired. This night was different. Another girl from the restaurant and I agreed to meet the cook in his friend's apartment. In all honesty, I don't even remember where the place was. But I do remember that it was a nondescript building and the inside the apartment was empty. No furniture, nothing. In retrospect, that probably should have been a red flag, but again, 17. Once we got to the house, the cook and his friend offered us a drink, a rum and coke. I accepted it and took off my coat while it was being made. Everything after that is a blur. I remember taking a sip, and the next thing I know, I'm in the kitchen. I'm gripping the countertops and trying to keep from falling. I feel scared. I don't know what I'm afraid of, I just remember being terrified. It's kind of like a nightmare where you enter halfway through the story and you know something terrible is about to happen, but you don't know how you know or what it will be or when it will happen. I must have blinked. When I opened my eyes again, I was in the living room. I'm on my back and the cook is panting and sweating and thrusting. I try to process what's happening. I guess my body knew before my brain caught up because tears are silently and profusely streaming down my face. He sees them and wipes them, and I hear myself saying, No, it's okay, I'm fine. And then I blink again. When I open my eyes, it's morning. My phone is dead, so I have no idea what time it is. I have a splitting headache. I struggle to stand up, but finally find my footing. I look around the apartment, and no one is there. Not the cook, not his friend, not the girl from the restaurant. I get my stuff, and I drive home. The cook never came back to work after that night. He gave no explanation to management, he just disappeared. And I went on with my life. That was it. That was where the story ended. I didn't tell anyone about what happened, not out of shame or embarrassment. The truth is, I didn't even realize I'd been raped. It took me almost a year to understand what had happened to me. At this point in my life, I hadn't had much experience with alcohol. I'd been drunk before, but never to the point of blacking out. I didn't have much of a barometer for what that would feel like. I told myself I must have had too much to drink, and that's why I didn't remember what happened. Since then, I've experienced blackouts, but I've never felt the way I felt that night. I only remember taking one sip. I wasn't drunk, I was drugged. They say you shouldn't blame the victim, but when you are the victim, it's all too easy to blame yourself. I woke up crying with a man on top of me, and I didn't realize it was rape. I comforted him. I remember thinking, well, yes, I'm crying, and no, I don't want to have sex with him, but clearly I must have said it was okay because here he is doing it. Can't take it back now. I wish I hadn't been so flirty. I wish I hadn't drank so much. I think that's what gets to me the most. This man wasn't a powerful man. He wasn't an authority. He was a cook at a restaurant. Yet I still felt the need to submit to his desires. While he was raping me, I was thinking, I don't want this to be happening, but it's too late to change my mind. That's the message women received. The effed up message. I don't want to curse. That women receive. It's so ingrained in us that we don't even recognize it as wrong. So that's my story of what happened to me. And like I said, it did take me a really long time to even really realize what was happening. But in a way, I think that really kind of shifted my experience because it probably would have been a lot harder to cope with had I realized immediately. But since I realized it like a year later, it was kind of removed and I could kind of be like, I guess maybe that's just like a detachment defense mechanism. I don't know.
Right.
Like, what do you think?
I mean, I guess you're saying like you feel like you already got through it.
Right. Like,
so
if I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I didn't even realize. It's kind of like, have you ever had a relationship where like afterwards you look back and you're like, man, that was really messed up. But like, you don't really feel so bad about it because you're like, but that's so long ago that happened.
Right. If you feel like it's not affecting you any longer, then you can kind of let go of it, I guess.
Right.
I mean, it goes back to what we were kind of talking about. I don't know if this was like when we talked about dad dying or what, but just like when people always say like, I have no regrets. And I'm like, cool. Like, good for you.
Yeah.
And I always think like, that's really nice. Like, but I guess, like, it's like if you're in a place in your life where you're happy and you're, like, genuinely content with what you have and you're satisfied, then you don't have to have regrets because you feel like this is good enough or whatever. But if you're striving for something else, or you feel like the things you've done have put you in a place and you're not happy with it, then you're obviously going to still have regrets.
Right, of course.
Because you're still working through it. So
I
guess it's
don't
kind of
know.
similar. And also, you never had to see him again. Like you said, like, you don't even
go to
know.
work
Maybe you
anymore.
feel like you're over it, but if you were to see him
that's
again,
true.
you don't know.
I was just thinking about that. Like, what if I were to, like, see him? I was like, how would I even react? Because at this point, like, this is over 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So, like, and I remember I finally told someone this story, I think, like, a couple of years after it had happened. And he's like, well, did you report it? And I was like, no, what am I going to report? 5 years ago, I got drugged. There's no way to, like, there's nothing to prove. Like, I can't prove that, you know? There's no evidence left. And he's like, well, he could be out there doing that to other girls. And I was like, well, F you. Like, that, as much as, like, yes, I can see that point of view, and, like, that is a strong argument, but, like, also it's his responsibility not to hurt other people, not my responsibility
To stop
to
him.
prevent him from hurting other people.
Right. And I mean, that's, like you had kind of said, like, a lot of people don't come forward. Or you said you didn't not say something to anyone because you were ashamed, or you had, you know, you were embarrassed.
Right.
And that is a reason that a lot of people don't come forward, because they do blame themselves and they feel like it's their fault.
Right.
Like we had heard earlier, most women know they're assaulters, so they're going to feel like they did something, you know?
Right.
And the most common form of rape would be, like, date rape. And even if it's not involving drugs, obviously that's different because you then weren't in control.
Right.
And they were obviously doing something to you to force you to do what they wanted.
Right.
That's obviously different than just a typical, like, date rape scenario where you're just with a person that you agree to be with, but then at some point you no longer consent.
Right. And change your mind.
So, I mean, that happens, and I think that's the most common form, and then people feel like, is it even rape? Like, did
Right.
I even get raped? I said I would do it. Am I just... And then also the flip side is some people's argument against it is, women just have regrets and then they're going to go ahead and say they were raped. But I don't think that's a fair assessment. I think part of it does have to do with the perception. Like, I definitely think there are situations where a woman can walk away, or a person, because it could be a man too.
Right.
Or it could be, like, it doesn't have to be a heterosexual relationship either, but one person can walk away and say, that was not consensual.
Right.
And the other person can say, that was totally consensual.
Yeah, definitely.
And they just wouldn't know.
Right.
So part of that problem, too, is communicating. And I'm not saying to blame the victim. I think it goes both ways.
Right.
Both people should always be asking for and getting, like, a confirmatory consent.
Right.
And
Which I think, like, they teach people now. And, of course, it becomes, like, a meme, like, in some, like, shows or whatever. They'll be like, sign this contract, like, before they hold hands. But, like, the concept is there's nothing wrong with saying, is it okay if I do this? Are you okay? Do you want me to stop? You know, like, there's nothing
Right.
wrong with asking those questions. So
Or talk about it later. Like, how many times, like, you know, I think I talked about this on the episode we had, Updates, where I was with someone or we were, like, talking for a while and stuff, and then we had, like, a sexual experience, and it was kind of awkward.
Right.
And then we just never hung out again. But I feel like we could have definitely, like, talked it out and, like, gotten past that awkwardness.
Right.
Obviously, that's not the same thing. But the point is, like, sometimes you can just... Sometimes it is more of a miscommunication with certain things.
yeah, definitely.
And I think if people were more open about it, then both sides would know. Like, the person doing it would know, okay, that's not okay. And the other person would know they're not trying. Like, they do actually care about me. They're not just, like,
right.
trying to do whatever I want against my will. So sometimes I think it is, like, that's where it gets, like, to the gray area of whose responsibility is it at that point. I think it's both people's responsibility. I think you have to communicate
like,
clear about what you want, but you also have to be...
You also have to
You have
listen
to ask, and you have to, like, you have to explicitly ask, because that's the only way to know.
And I think it also gets, like, really kind of, like, gray area when, like, both parties are drunk.
Right.
You know, like, and I know, like, I've talked before, and obviously we don't want to, like, ruffle feathers. Like, if you've had an experience that's true to you, like, it's valid, you know?
Right.
But I do sometimes argue with, like, the types of the types of terminology that people ascribe to like certain situations, and they'll like say some things rape or something, when I'll be like, okay, but I don't know that it necessarily was. And I feel like as a survivor, sometimes I feel like I have like a higher standard set, if that makes sense. Like, I know it's like kind of messed up, but like, I don't know, like, because I've definitely had experiences, where like I've seen or been in an experience where maybe like you're both kind of drunk and then you both are like, that was a mistake and you regret it, but that wasn't like a rape, you know what I mean?
Right. Like, I was in a situation once where both of us were drunk and we were, very consensually about to have intercourse, and basically I just was like, I didn't even
physically you weren't
physically, I wasn't ready. It was just like not like prepped for entry. And so I was like, no, like that's not gonna happen. And he's just like, oh, we'll just do it. I'm like, no. And I'm literally like saying no, and he's just continuing to go. So I had to like kick him off of me, like literally get my feet up to his shoulders, and like I kicked him off of me, and he kind of like flew across the hotel room. But I was like, dude, I'm literally saying no, you are raping me right now.
Right.
I was like, you are trying to rape me. And he's like, oh gosh, I'm sorry. And I was like, okay, but I was literally being no, and you're like, yes.
Right.
So
yeah,
that was more of a situation where I was able to be like I wasn't like mad at him or even upset about it, because it was
feel,
more
like victimized. You were just like, oh, the situation has changed.
There was no like power dynamic there. It was just like he was drunk. He was like, okay, but let me just, and I was like,
single
no,
track
it's
mind.
a hard no, and you just have to. And I think that does happen, and that's why. But that's why it's tricky. It's interesting. Like, I know this is a story, and I don't want to like necessarily again like ever offend someone, because I think anything that you feel like you said is valid, but sometimes I guess it's good to like look at what the other person's point of view is. And I know that like we have some friends who they would get upset if they're telling us a story, because my instinct is always to give the other person's point of view, but that's just how I deal with any conflicts. Like, I always am thinking, why did that person do that? What was that person's motivation? Because to me, like, the motivation does matter. Like, I get that you can hurt someone, but if someone punches me in the face, or if they're just like fist pumping and my face happened to land where their fist was, it's obviously different, right? The result could be the same. I could break my nose either way, but their intention is different, and to me that does matter. So I'm always looking at like why people do what they do. But I know we had a friend who was like, why are you trying to defend them? I'm like, I'm not trying to defend the other person in like your argument or whatever. I'm just trying to help you understand them, because that will help you to then like move forward with your relationship or whatever. Because it's always better to see where someone else is coming from. But so this is like, okay, it's like a kind of weird, I don't know if it's going to be like stupid, but one of the Vampire Chronicles written by Anne Rice, I think it's like Tale of the Body Thief. So basically, Lestat meets this guy who's like, I know how to project my psyche, like my entire like soul, into another person. And he really wants to put his soul into Lestat because he wants to see what it's like to be like a powerful vampire. And Lestat's like, oh, this sounds pretty cool. Like, I could go back to being like a human for a little while. So
they like swap bodies?
Yeah.
Okay.
So at first the man's like this old feeble man, but he's like, no, I found this like really good body. So he gets this like really strong like young guy. And so they switch bodies. But then Lestat's like, oh, I hate being a human. Like, he realizes, okay, like he talks about how urinating is like so pleasurable because of the like relief of it. And he's like, ew, it's so disgusting. Like, because for a vampire, I guess the only thing that brings him pleasure is like drinking blood. So, but then he basically ends up raping this girl, and he's like, and he talks about it as like this concentrated pleasure, and it's like overwhelming, can't control it. And I was like, okay, interesting. Like, I'm not saying that's an excuse to ever rape someone. I don't think there's ever an excuse to rape someone. But I was like, I see that, and especially when you see people who are like drunk, and they're like, I just... Or, like, even when they're not drunk,
like, it's almost like
just,
they really can't control. Like, they just get into that. It's like they say the stupid cliche of, like, a man has two heads, but only enough blood to power one at a time. Like, it's like a homing beacon. Sometimes that thing. So, yeah, I mean, it's true. Like...
Or it was kind of...
And, like you said, you had to kick that guy to, like, snap him out of it. But, like, you did get him to snap out of it. But, like, he didn't mean... like, he wasn't trying to, like, force himself on you, but he just was thinking, like, here's what we're doing.
And he was thinking, like, she'll be okay. Like,
Yeah, like, it'll be fine.
Yeah, so I think, like, I don't think it's an excuse, but I guess also for me, like, I've definitely, like, assaulted people. Like, I've groped people when I'm drunk. And they're like, stop touching me. And then I'll be like, eventually I'll be like, oh, okay. You know, but, like, I'll definitely, like, be very,
and I think it's, like, a lot
aggressive.
different, too, because you've definitely, like, used to when you were drunk, like, yeah, you would grope, men, you would grope men, like, we should say. You wouldn't generally go around groping women, but,
right.
Yeah, it's, like, and it is a double standard in that regard, that, like, you would go around groping a man. If a guy groped me like that at a bar, he would immediately be kicked out. But there's no question, like, he would be kicked out.
Sometimes, I mean, we were at that bar where that guy kept groping people, and he kept touching our friend. And I went to his friend and I was like, tell your friend to stop touching people. Because I saw him, like, physically just, like, groping. And the girls being like, get the hell away from me. To the point where he, like, wasn't leaving them alone. And I was like, control your friend. Like, come on. Because, like, with me, or, like, even other people we've known, like, we would just kind of steer them. We'd be like, okay, like, come on, you know.
Yeah, get away from me.
Because it's, like... And yeah, that's also, like, a reason why I don't drink anymore. Because, like, I know that I do things that I...
Right, and because, like, for a man to be like, oh my god, I feel so violated. Like, this girl just came up at a bar and, like, grabbed my junk. People are going to be like, oh, man up. Like, what's wrong with you? But, like, that's just as valid, too. Like, really? And I think the older I've gotten, the more I feel that way. I don't know what it is. Like, if someone were to grab me now, I would be I would feel really violated. Right. But, like, when I was, like, 21, I was like, it's kind of, like, the vibe of the bar. Like, I didn't really care. But even at that restaurant, before the whole thing happened with me actually being raped, I mean, sexual harassment is rampant in restaurants. It is a huge problem. Like, I had guys at that restaurant touching me all the time, just coming up behind me. One time, this guy came right up behind me, literally, like, just put his hand up, like, in between my legs. I was wearing pants. He just went up my thigh and kind of, like, grabbed in between my legs. I guess he grabbed me by the pussy. Like, you know, I never really thought about it, but that's, like, what he did. And I had been losing weight and getting more healthy. And he's like, oh, your body's so tight, and just, like, grabbing me. And I'm like, then I don't know. I didn't really care. I was just like, whatever. It didn't bother me so much. But now I'm like, oh my God, if someone did that to me today, like, I would probably punch them in the face. But it probably wouldn't hurt much because I'm really bad at punching people. But, you know, like, it's just crazy. Like, yeah. It's just really crazy, like, to think about the ways in which I have been, like, grabbed and touched, that today I'm like, oh my God, no way.
Right.
And I was a teenager. I was 17, 18 years old when I worked there. Like, so I was a child for half of that time. That's what's really messed up about it.
Right. Exactly.
Like, it's just very disturbing.
And I mean, that whole idea of, like, what you were saying about when it happens to men, people being like, yeah, good, nice, you know, and...
Yeah, like, even when you hear stories of, like, teachers who have sex with their students, and they're like, oh, I wish my hot teacher would have sex with me. And I'm like, except that's messed up. And I work with high school kids, and, like, they're kids.
Yeah.
Like, they don't have the understanding, really, of what those decisions are going to do to them. Because even,
they kind of talked about that on, like, True Blood, because Jason, like, he, I guess, had a relationship with one of his teachers. Do you remember that? And then...
I don't know.
So then, like, he went back and saw her.
Oh, yeah, and then, he got all messed up about it.
And then he was basically like, that was messed up, yeah.
Right, like, you don't realize it when you're living in it. Even, like, for women who are in that situation, like, girls who maybe have a crush on their teacher, and they're like, it's totally consensual. But then you grow up and realize, like, no, that was perverse, like...
So that makes me think of two things. First, I wanted to mention, like, as far as statistics are concerned, like, we're aware, and most people, if you're not aware, you can become aware now that, like, rape statistics are skewed because men will report less, even less so than women report.
Right.
And it goes along probably, like, at least this is the idea, that it goes along with the thought that they're more embarrassed, that it's emasculating, so it just kind of is something that...
And, like, it's hard for people to believe men can even be raped.
Right.
Because of the fact that their biology, they say, would prohibit it, but it's like, no.
Well, if you're saying a man is raped by a woman,
right?
But
that's what
men can also be raped by other men.
If it's like a sodomy type issue,
right?
Obviously.
But then also your other point brings me to a movie I wanted to mention, which this is more about childhood sexual assault, but it's called The Tale, and I think I might have talked about it before in here.
Maybe. I watched it. It's on HBO.
Oh, you did watch it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I know I told our friends about it. It's very disturbing. So it's basically Laura Dern plays the main character, but it's about this. I think it's like based on a true story, so it's like a documentary maker, and her mom like finds the story that she wrote when she was in like 7th grade or 8th grade about how she had this like sexual relationship with her running coach who was like 35 years old. And her mom's like, is this true? I'm so sorry. And she's like, Mom, it's fine. Like, it's nothing. We were just like, we just had a relationship. Like, and she literally just thought like her whole life, like, oh, I was like
dated this older
in
guy.
a relationship with this like 35-year-old when I was 13 years old. But then when her mom said that, she starts looking back at it. And then it's funny because she remembers the summer that she met him. And then she starts talking to one of the girls who, like, went to this kind of camp thing with her. And then she was like, oh, you were so shy and you looked like a 10-year-old boy. And then it, like, replays the memory and you see her actually... Because, like, in her memory, she's more of, like...
Mature
looking and whatever. Yeah, and then when you goes back, it actually shows her as, like, a very young-looking, like, prepubescent kind of girl. And then she basically just starts realizing, like, oh, all my memories of that time were skewed and, like... She starts kind of coming to terms with the fact that this man raped her repeatedly.
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera.
And it's like, and yeah, you don't always recognize it. Even I'm saying, oh, like, being raped didn't really impact me. But I also don't know. Like, it might have impacted me in ways that I didn't realize. Like, you know, so it's like, there could have been things. I've made a lot of bad decisions in my life. And was it because of this event? I don't think so. But, like, it could have been partially... You know what I mean? Like, it could be that I experienced that trauma and I internalized it in some way and it led to, like, self-destructive behaviors. That's possible. But I can't really specifically attribute anything to that event. But I don't have a way of knowing, you know?
Right.
So it's hard to say. But that's kind of, like, why it's extra messed up, I guess.
Yeah. Well, definitely. I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, you don't know. I mean, with anything, you never know, like, what affects you. Like, we've always tried to pinpoint, like, I do feel like part of our upbringing that has been really positive for us is, like, our mother's unconditional love. Mm-hmm. And I think that has given us, like, a sense of confidence and, like, self-assurance to just at least, like, know. And also to be loving people. Like, we're very loving people as well.
Right.
And I think that helps us to be able to, like, believe in ourselves in a way and, like, have conviction in what we believe in.
Right.
But you have to think a lot about that and do a lot of introspection. And also, you're never sure. You're just making those kinds of, like, connections yourself, but you don't know. You have no idea.
Exactly.
So, you know.
And I mean, did you have any questions for me about what
So I was going to say, like, why did you think it was important for you to share your story?
So, a lot of it was, like, from the Me Too movement, you know? Like, that came out, and I remember I posted, like, #MeToo, and, like, a bunch of other women in, like, my newsfeed did on Facebook. But then I told my whole story during Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation. It, like, really kind of stirred up in me a lot of anger, I guess, and just, like, resentment because of the fact that this woman was telling her story and people were just not believing her. And I feel like if someone says I was raped, your knee-jerk reaction shouldn't be prove it. Because how? Like, and that's why I say in my story, like, there's no way I would be able to prove this to be true. Right? I have nothing going for me. Like, there's no evidence. I don't even know where it happened. I don't remember what the building was. I don't remember what town it was in. It was, like, over 10 years ago. But I still remember it happened. Right. You know, and it was a valid thing that I experienced. But I didn't. There's no outcry witness. Like, nothing. So how could I prove it? But would I feel compelled if this person suddenly became famous or gained notoriety? Like, would I feel compelled to tell my story? And honestly, probably not. Because, like, you see the reactions that women who come forward get. And it's, like, as sad as that is, and as much as I'd like to believe I'd have enough conviction to go forward, I don't want to have my life pulled apart and every single decision I've ever made in terms of partners or sex criticized and drawn out in front of the entire world, you know? So it's like, it's really messed up. But I mean, that's kind of why I felt it was important to tell, to just be like, you know, here's my story. And then even I remember afterwards, a friend of mine said to me, a guy friend, he was like, yeah, you know, I saw, like, you had posted, like, Me Too, like, that day, and, like, it made me so sad. And I was like, good, like, it should make you sad. Like, I think it's like an open secret that all women know and like men seemingly don't realize how much women are victimized. Because I'm like, I don't know a person in my life that's a female that hasn't had some kind of encounter with sexual harassment or assault, either as a victim or as like a friend of a victim. You know what I mean?
Right.
Everyone has a personal connection to it, and that's really messed up. So, but I don't think all men realize that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I think some people were surprised when that hashtag was going around, like how many people were saying it. And I mean, sometimes obviously, like you said, like there's different levels to the severity of like those instances that have happened for people. Right. But you talked about like what might happen if you had come forward, or like with Dr. Ford when she came forward about Brett Kavanaugh. So that kind of talks about like re-victimization. So the idea that another reason why a lot of women either don't report or don't, you know, want to pursue
go to trial.
Like, yeah, go to trial or like prosecute or whatever, is because they get what we call re-victimized in court, and they're just dragging their entire sexual history through, and it's obviously very aggressive, like they're picking apart their story and everything like that, and it's hard enough. So
yeah, exactly. So
plus you have to then face your accuser as well, which obviously is the, you know, defendant's right. Okay, like I'm not saying that people who are accused of crime shouldn't have rights,
right? Of course,
obviously, but
I mean, and I think a lot of times it is cathartic to like, honestly, like I feel like nowadays, if ever I were to see my rapist again, I don't even think I would want like justice. I would just want like an apology, and just to say like, yeah, like a confirmation that happened to me. Well, I don't think he needs to be locked up for it. I just think he needs to say, yes, this is a thing that I did, and obviously I wouldn't want it to happen again. You know what I mean? But it's kind of like, I guess I have more of a restorative justice approach. Like I would want him to come to terms with what he did, and maybe seek counseling and realize like why he would do those horrible things and not do them anymore. But I don't necessarily think I'd be like, I wouldn't probably pursue like criminal charges, right? You know, because I'm like I said, it's kind of past that for me.
Yeah. Do you think you would do what the girl in the tale did?
What, go and embarrass him in front of like...
Well, I don't think that was her goal. I think she just saw him.
She just saw him and she got really angry. Honestly, I don't think so.
She just like approached him and like started yelling about how he did all that stuff to her.
I mean, you know, I have no emotions. No, I don't think I would do that. I think I would be more measured and probably want to talk in private or like, you know, in a different situation.
But do you think that would ever happen? I can't imagine like if you did see that person that he would ever be like, yeah, I did that.
Well, no, but I mean also like he just like left work after, like, honestly sometimes I think back to it and the fact that like no one was at this apartment, like the girl wasn't there, I'm like, they probably thought I was dead, because like I'm pretty like I don't remember most of what happened, but I remember like being raped and waking up in the same spot on the floor.
Were you all in the same room, or were there different rooms?
Well, at first we were in the same room, the kitchen, but then after, I literally don't remember.
Well, you wouldn't know.
Yeah, I don't, because I took that one
sip. But you saw her after that.
No. Oh, yeah, later. But I think right after that, she like had gone on vacation or something. Like we didn't work a lot together, and like I think we just didn't talk about it. Or if we did, we were like, oh, that was so crazy. You know, like.
But
thinking,
I'm saying I don't know if she thought you were dead.
Oh, yeah. No, but I meant, like, in that moment. Like, I feel like he probably was, like, he just left me there? Like, that's...
Well, if he has experience with
I mean, I guess maybe he thinks, like... Maybe he thought I would wake up and remember what he did. But, like, they just completely left me in this strange place. Like, on the floor. I didn't even know where I was. I didn't have my... Like I said, my cell phone was dead. This was before, like, iPhone. So, like, I didn't have a GPS. I didn't know how to get home. I had to drive home and, like... figure out my way. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, it's just really weird to me.
Yeah, how did you get home?
I don't know. I think it was probably like, I wasn't too far away from where we lived, so I probably just asked for directions or knew enough to know I have to go north or west or whatever. Who knows? I don't remember, to be honest.
Yeah,
but, I mean, it's crazy. Like, it's really crazy.
Well, you had talked before about how you wanted to share as well because you wanted like young people to know like to kind of become aware about what the difference between like being drugged is and being drunk, and
which is like, yeah, I think definitely, because I'd heard of like roofies before, and you always hear like, oh, don't let other people make your drink, and like don't leave your drink out at a bar, but like you don't think about that. A person that I've already spent time with outside of work, like if one of my friends were gonna make me a drink, I wouldn't be like, no, you know what I mean?
Nobody ever thinks that. Like, how many times have you left your drink in a bar?
Yeah, exactly.
And so like just come back to it like.
And I would never think that this person who, like, I was hanging out with... And the thing is, I don't know, like... Would I have had sex with him if he hadn't drugged me? Part of me is like, maybe. He was really persistent. Like, maybe I just would have, because I was, like, a stupid kid, and I didn't always make the best choices in, like, who my partners were.
Right.
But, like, maybe you could have just done that instead of forcing me to do it. I don't know. But it's, like... It's hard to say, obviously, because I don't have any idea what I would have done. And I wasn't interested in him that way,
Which is so screwed up. It's like, it's one thing to just be drunk and like, okay, like I was with someone recently, like in the summer, and after we were together, he was like, oh, I'm so drunk. And I was like, I'm sorry, like, I didn't know you were drunk. Yeah, and then I immediately was like, okay, well, I hope you wanted to do this. Like,
yeah.
I was just like... I honestly didn't know
he obviously planned what he did to me. Like, he obviously thought of it beforehand.
And I'm like, how can you, like, it's, like, just such a different level. And I guess that's why there's, like, the degrees in New York. I think in New Jersey it's just, I don't think it's called...
And I think that's kind of why, like, had I had experience with alcohol before this had happened, and I had realized...
You're experiencing it right now.
Yeah. And I had realized that I was drugged in that moment, I probably would have the next day gone right to the police.
Because you maybe would have said
because I would have been like, oh, I was drugged and raped, but I didn't realize I was raped because I didn't realize I was drugged because I didn't know what that felt like. And of course I have news stories of like, well, how much had you drank that night and blah 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 blah.
Right.
So I was like, oh well, obviously I just like had sex with someone I didn't really want to have sex with, like, my bad.
Yeah.
But like, if I had known that, yes, I probably would have gone straight to the police and I've been like, can you test me to make sure I don't have something in my system? And then if they did, I could have been like, well, here's the person who did it, and then
right.
I would have had a chance. But, like, he wore a condom, so still, like, not that much evidence, whatever. If you don't believe what a person says, then
was the condom there or no? I'm probably not.
I don't remember. I don't think so. Maybe
because you weren't even thinking about that anyway.
Yeah, I wouldn't be, like, thinking about it. You'd be like, oh, we clean up this.
But I'm just thinking about, like, how can, like, I just don't, like,
so yeah, like,
think, like, oh, if you're, like, a violent rapist, like, it's really bad. But that's just as bad. That's the same thing. Like, you're...
Right, like, you planned this, you lured
and for
me,
what
a child.
Like, you're basically passed out. Like, it's so disgusting.
Yeah,
it's
like,
so
is this pleasurable
repulsive.
for you? Like, what was it about me that you so desperately needed to have sex with me? Like, I was a child, and I don't understand that. Like, something about my body, or, like, was it my personality? Because obviously you weren't experiencing my personality if I was drugged. So, like, was it just some really weird power trip? Like, you and, like, hated me for some reason? That you just, like, wanted to hurt me? I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, like, I'd never met that other guy before, so I guess maybe that was, like, his roofie connection. I have no idea. But, like, yes, I think what I would want to do is try to explain. Like, if I have daughters, I would try to explain to them, this is what being drugged feels like. And now, do I know that I was drugged? I feel that I was drugged. But I don't actually know that what I had was roofie, or, like, I don't know that. I never had a test for any of those things. Leave your system quickly. So, like, I have no idea what kind of drug I was given. But I can only speak to my experience, so I can tell my daughters, this is what it felt like for me. If you ever feel this way, and you are not sure why, just call me. And I would probably at some point, I used to always say, like, I would never let my kids drink alcohol, like, underage. But I do kind of understand the feeling of, like, I would rather my kids, like, be at a family party and kind of get the understanding of here's what it's like to be buzzed, here's how it feels, so you can kind of gauge your limits before they go out and do that somewhere with no experience. So I can be like, okay, guys, so you know what it's like to be buzzed. You know how you should feel after you drink one sip of rum and Coke. So if you're feeling some entirely different way, then you need to call someone for help. Whether it's me or your aunts or whomever, the police, whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. If you get into trouble, we'll fix it. But, like, you won't get into trouble from me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
So that's, I think, is important. But it's also, like, what am I going to be like? Well, I should give my kids roofies so they know what it feels like. Like, I don't really think you can really describe, like, exactly how it feels.
No, but
and
I think that's a
even
good
if I
point that
knew
you...
how it felt, would I have had I wouldn't have been able to stop it in the moment, but at least I would have been able to say afterwards, oh,
Right.
this thing just happened to me, and recognize it. But yeah, like, there's no way in the like, it literally felt like a nightmare. Like, I don't really have a better way to describe it, because I've had nightmares before, or like, one nightmare that I always have is like, I'm trying to do a simple task. A lot of times it's call 911, right? And I just like can't. Like, I'm dialing the phone wrong, or like it's a busy signal, or I drop it, or I hit 991, and I'm like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it felt like in that moment. I was like trying to just move, and I'm like, why am I not able to like move or think clearly? Like, what is wrong? So if I was trying to actually call for help in that moment, I wouldn't have been able to.
Right.
But like I said, then I could have at least known afterwards and have maybe potentially done something about it. But then it's kind of like, would my whole life have been changed if from age 17 I identified as a rape survivor? I don't know. Probably. Like, I feel like having that identification might even have as much of an impact as the actual event itself.
Yeah, I guess.
Hard to say.
It's true. It's really difficult. I mean, and everybody handles it differently, I think, too.
Right. Of course. I mean, there's all kinds of reactions, and I always try to remain judgment-free of things like that, because obviously, you know, like, I don't always react in what would be considered like a typical way
Right.
for things. So I'm like, I try to just understand that people have a lot of various types of reactions. But honestly, like, watching, well, I know it's like, again, stupid, but like, even watching Law and Order, like, you do learn a lot. And again, I don't know how accurate this stuff is, but like, you learn a lot about like some of the ways that rape victims respond, and you also learn a lot about just like, I don't know, the nuances of each different case. And I know in that show, like, Olivia, the detective's always like, if someone is reported a rape, she always will encourage them to get a rape kit done. And a lot of times, you know, they won't want to. And she's like, listen, if you can get this done and never proceed, but there have been a lot of times where people wish they had done this, so don't deprive yourself of that opportunity should you ever change your mind. But it's like, of course, even getting a rape kit done is like really pretty traumatic.
Right.
Because they take swabs of everything. They photograph all parts of your body, you know. It's very intrusive.
Right.
And if you don't have the right kind of professionals, now most people are well trained in those units to walk you through it, you know, and keep you feeling safe. But of course, think about any time you've had a doctor with poor bedside manner. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I told you about a time I had a gynecologist who was like really rough with me. So like, you know, something like that could be really re-triggering for someone if they just went through trauma.
Right. Yeah, of course.
So understandably why they wouldn't want to.
It's, I mean, yeah, I understand that too. So I think like another thing I was thinking about with like moving forward, or like how can like you teach kids or people in general about like what to do, and just thinking about consent, like part of it, like a simple thing you can do is like talking to kids about, like, I guess like a lot of people think like, oh, when kids are playing, like it's okay for them to be a little bit like rough, especially if they're siblings. Mm-hmm. But I think part of it is like, if one sibling or person is like, stop doing that you just kind of teach kids, he said stop.
Right.
Or she said stop, so stop doing that. Like, they don't like it when you, even if it's just like poke them on the arm. Like, they said they don't like it, so stop it. If someone says they don't want you to do something, you stop. And just kind of like, I think it's like a thing that people are so used to, just like, they push that envelope in those like innocent ways, and then it just becomes like part of what they're used to doing when it becomes like less innocent.
Right.
So
yeah, like, I mean, when we said we're not going to go too much into like childhood sexual abuse, but even in that, you know, like teaching body ownership to your kids, and like when you're tickling a kid and they say stop, then you stop, because that's their body. And then you can say to them, oh, if you say stop, I'm going to stop. So like, if you don't actually want me to stop tickling you, you know, like, say, you can say something else, you know, but like, if you say stop, I'm going to stop because you told me to. And that teaches kids that they have control over their body, and they shouldn't be told, they shouldn't be subjected to something that makes them physically uncomfortable, because that's a reason why a lot of kids don't talk about abuse, is because they don't realize it's going on, because they think, oh, well, I don't like to hug Aunt Joanne when we leave because she's kind of weird, or she squeezes me too tight, or I don't like touching her, whatever. But my mom always makes me give her a hug and a kiss when we're going somewhere. So then that kind of teaches her, okay, so sometimes it's okay for grown-ups to touch me even when I don't like it.
Right.
And that's why they say, like, you shouldn't really force kids to hug or kiss other family members. And I'm like, that's really valid. And I had never really thought about that before, but I think everyone has been in a situation where they've been, like, forced into an awkward hug or kiss with a family member that they don't want to do.
Yeah.
And it's like, why would you put that on your kid just so that this adult can be like, oh, he didn't hug me, I'm so offended. Like, that adult can just grow up and recognize, like, sometimes people don't want to kiss you, and sometimes they don't want to hug you, and they can still be polite and say goodbye, but, like, they don't have to touch you. They don't have to be physically demonstrative towards you. Like, it's not required.
Yeah, I agree. As long as you're teaching your kids, like, it's disrespectful to, like, not say goodbye to someone.
Right. Yeah.
Whatever.
I mean, you don't want to have them be
someone who's,
rude.
like, trying to say goodbye to you.
Yeah, like, but they can wave, or if they're comfortable with a high five or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But blow a kiss, maybe, you know. I don't know. It's interesting for sure. And I know people sometimes can be like, oh my God, this is taking it too far. And I'm like, but why? If we're saying 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys experiences abuse at some point at the hands of an adult, well, obviously there's something wrong with that situation. Like,
and as an adult, why would you keep doing it? Like,
why would you just making a kid uncomfortable?
Right. And there's sometimes where, like, the kid, yes, with the tickling, they're always like, stop tickling me. And then they'll, like, put their arm up in your face and with, like,
yeah,
a funny, like,
me.
ha ha. And it's like, okay. And I'm like, do you want me to tickle you? They're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, okay. And then, like,
yeah, it's like,
just,
yeah,
like,
because
I'll
that's very much in the vein of, like, no means yes.
Right.
It's like, well, yeah, when you teach them like that, sure, but you got to teach them at a young age. No means no, yes means yes, like, so.
But we know some people who are adults who, like, they'll be, like, annoying a kid in a way with a physical thing, and the kid's, like, getting visibly upset, and they just keep doing it. And I'm like, stop. Like, he doesn't want you to do that to him anymore.
Right.
And it's like, so weird. It's like, why would you even be motivated to continue?
Yeah,
like,
well,
the person is visibly upset. It's like, why wouldn't you just stop? Like, but
yeah,
to
why
me,
is your goal to make someone cry?
yeah, like, to me, like, it's just like, if you're upsetting someone, you kind of, like, adjust what you're doing, whether it's a child or an adult, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But, you know, so that's why it's interesting to me. But also, yeah, just talking to the kids about it, because even, like, in the one class I teach, there's this one student, and all these other kids are like, he looks like a fish, and he really didn't like it. He was like, I don't like when they say that.
He really did look like a fish.
I don't really think so. They thought he looked like Dory from, like, Finding Nemo. And he was like, I don't like it. And then the teacher I work with was like, stop. Like, she's like, he said he doesn't like it. They go, he knows we're kidding. He's fine with it. And he's like, no, I don't like it. And she's like, he doesn't like it.
And
he's
so many times
saying,
the kids will not say that. They'll be like, he knows we're kidding. And the kids will be like, yeah.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm like, well, I don't like it. So
right.
stop. Like, this is my classroom and I don't like to hear that. So stop. Right. And that's a problem I've seen in my school with, my school is not very diverse. Mm. So, you know, I've seen, like, insensitive, not like racial slurs, but like insensitive jokes made at the expense of, like, maybe a black student. And they'll be, like, saying things, and I'm like, guys, that's not appropriate. And then the kid will be like, no, it's fine. And I'm like, no, but it's not. Like, you know, something like, oh, you're going to eat fried chicken, or, like, whatever. Like, something like that. Just, like, racially charged statements. Wow. Or something like, you're great at basketball. Like, whatever. Some kind of stereotype.
So, yeah, because they're just so ignorant.
They're ignorant. And I'm like, guys, that's not okay. And then the kids will be like, no, it's fine. And they seem to actually not mind. But I'm like, no, it's not fine. And that's not something you should, like, that's not something that should be acceptable.
Right. Like, you should think it's fine.
Yeah, I'm like, you know, but then who am I to say what you should think? But, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, no, it's actually not. It's not okay. It's not an okay thing to say. It doesn't have a place here. And this hasn't happened for a couple years. But, you know, it's just like kids are stupid. So they say stupid, ignorant things all the time. And I straight up say it to them. Sometimes I'm like, you guys sound really ignorant right now. And they'll be like, oh. And I'm like, well, I'm just telling you. That's how you sound. Like, I don't think it's an insult to say, I didn't say you're stupid or you're dumb. I said you're ignorant. You don't know what you're talking about here. So either educate yourself about it or stop talking about it.
Right.
That's it. And that does kind of shut them down. And I've never had anyone complain that I called their kid ignorant. But I would stand by it because that's how they sound.
Yeah, I mean, if they're saying something that's ignorant.
Yeah, and I'm like, and whether you guys know it's a joke or not, sometimes perception is reality. So, like, it matters how it comes across.
Right.
And that's it. Or, like, even, like, when we'll have kids being, like, joking about, like, suicide. They'll be like, oh, my God, I'm just going to kill myself. And I'm like, if you say that, I'm going to have to file a report with guidance. Is this something that you mean? Do you want me to follow up? And they'll be like, no, I'm just kidding. I'm like, okay, find a new descriptor. Like, find a new way to joke or to express your frustrations, because that's one that we really shouldn't be joking about. Like, that's a serious thing. And then they will, like, at least in my room, who knows what they do outside. But I just try to teach them, like, you know, guys, what you say matters, and the words have value, so think before you speak.
Yeah. Well, there's kind of an interesting thing, too, like, one thing that was happening in my school is, and it was something that one of the teachers I work with saw, because it was a group of students who they were in the hallway working on these, like, videos. Mm-hmm. So there's this one boy, and he has special needs, and these other kids were kind of, like, teasing him a bit, so, like, they had his arm around him, and he didn't seem very comfortable with it, and then the teacher I work with was like, oh, well, you shouldn't, like, hug someone if they don't want to. And he was like, that's right. And then, so they stopped. But then later, they, like, grabbed his butt. Mm-hmm. And he was like, yikes! And, like, grabbed both his cheeks and, like, kind of ran away. So then they had this whole meeting about it. And I guess in the meeting, they were talking about how they'll play this song and he'll dance. And he's like, yeah, I do my booty dance. And then he, like, shakes his butt. And, but I was like, and then I guess when the boy who was kind of like the instigator of it was there, he was like really upset about it and crying. And I guess he like didn't realize that he was like bullying this kid. He was like, we were just playing around, and like part of it, like the boy, like obviously the boy didn't want to be touched. Like he didn't want his butt grabbed, and he didn't want to like even be like hugged in that way by him. But like with the other stuff, like he's always like, I think he likes to dance, and he's like fine with doing like the booty dance, but it's like.
And it's like, are you taking advantage?
I don't even know if the other kid was, like, really was being malicious. He might have just been like, it's funny, and he's fine with doing it, so it's just, like, good-natured. But, yeah, he got suspended for a couple of days for it and stuff.
But, I mean, I think if the fact that he felt remorse over it, like, that's valid.
Yeah.
You know, that's good. Like, I mean, they're teenagers, they're dumb about stuff, but like all you can do is teach them, and then hopefully you can use that as an example moving forward to be like, don't treat people that way. I mean, obviously, like, at school, I don't know if you have to do this for student teaching, but we every year have to do trainings, like online, you know, trainings.
Okay, yeah.
And one of them is like for bullying.
Like HIV or something.
Yeah. So for the bullying one, they always talk about like the role of the bystander and how like you have to go from being a bystander to an upstander.
Right.
Which is like, you know, because they're like, you need to have a bystander culture. That is one of the ingredients necessary for bullying to continue. So if you don't have a bystander culture and people say that's not okay, then bullying stops, because there's three key components and that's one. So like the other two are unfair match and I forget what the third one is for a second.
Motivated offender or something. I mean, that's just like a criminology like idea that if you're not going to have crime without a motivated offender.
Yeah, like you need to
have the opportunity.
Intention, like, unfair match, whatever it is. But like, yeah, the bystander community is really important. So I think that's a huge thing to teach kids, is to advocate for each other, because sometimes it's really hard to advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of interesting because we're kind of going off topic with this, but like that whole
I feel like it's in the same vein.
Yeah, the whole like upstander mentality and stuff, like I've always been like that, and it's kind of, I mean, it's called like social emotional learning, right? This whole like idea that you're going to teach kids, and that like it's like it is a responsibility of schools to teach kids like how to be better people. Like that's kind of, so they're really developing these social emotional or SEL like learn.
Yeah.
SEL, like learning programs that are basically character development programs for like high school and middle school students, because they're still developing that stuff and really teaching them like, this is how you communicate with people, this is how you solve conflicts, this is how you're like just like being a good person, right?
Yeah, like here's just how to be a decent human being.
But I remember like when I was like a kid, like I think my mom said that my second grade teacher wrote her about how I was so nice, and like if a student was being picked on, I would go and like make that student feel better, or like try to befriend them so that they were like not sad anymore or something.
Right.
But I've always been like the person who like stands up to, I've always been an upstander. I've always been a person who stands up to bullies.
Right.
But I remember like I would argue with like people I knew who like, if other people in our life, they were bullies in a way, and the response was always like, oh, that's just how they are. And I remember just always saying, that's how they are because that's how you let them be.
Right.
And I was like, if you socially sanction them, like, they won't be that way anymore. I was like, if you don't allow that, if you say, no, that's not okay, like, they'll change. And it's funny that, like, now, they're like, oh, yes, we heard Jess. She's been saying that for the past 20 years. Literally, I was, like,
sure
10 years old, lecturing my
you.
mom about how people act like jerks because she lets them act like jerks. And I was like, don't let them and they won't do it.
Easier said than done, though. Like, that's very hard for a lot of people.
Because you then have to be, if you're doing it, you then become the focus. So that's why a lot of people don't want to upstand or stand up.
Yeah.
They don't want to stand up because then they become the focus of that person.
Right, exactly. So it takes a very high level of confidence to do that, especially in, like, a middle or high school setting where their stakes are really high.
And where your main goal is to not be noticed at all.
Right. Exactly. And, like, obviously as a teacher, like, it's easier, but it's a lot more powerful when it comes from a peer than a teacher. For sure. So, like, you know. But it's true. Like, I remember even being in, like, 6th grade or 7th grade or whatever, and these gym teachers were, like, making fun of this kid, and I was basically, like, calling them out on it. And then they were, like, saying they were going to call my mom and be like, what would she say? And I'm like, she would be proud of me because you're being a jerk. Like, you know, I don't care who you are. Like, you shouldn't talk to people that way. But, you know.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
I was also, like, a sassy kid, so
I did the
was
same
probably
thing.
bad.
I stood up to teachers once, and then, like, I was talking to one of my coworkers about it, and she's like, oh my gosh, what would your mom say? And I was like, my mom would have been proud of me. Like, my mom never told me, like, oh, respect authority just for the sake of it. She's like, people are being rude, you should say something. Like, you should stand up for people who are not being treated right.
And I think we've talked about that before on this show, but, like, I think, it's definitely really important to stand up for people, whether they can't stand up for themselves or are just too afraid, because, you know.
And that kind of goes along with,
what was that?
It was, this box, sorry.
Oh.
Our friends, they were on vacation, like, in the summer, and they actually saw a girl who maybe had been drugged, or she was just really drunk, and they basically kind of, like, stopped this guy from taking her home. Mm-hmm. And the cops got involved, and, you know, basically the girl ended up getting back to, like, wherever she was staying. But it was just kind of, like, an interesting... So it's almost like the what would you do, or what is that called? Like...
What would you do? That's like a show.
Yeah, what would you do? Okay, is that what it's called? I wasn't sure. But it's like, if you do see something that seems fishy, like...
You see something? Say something.
Yeah, don't just let it pass by. Like, if you see a girl who seems really drunk, and there's, like, 5 guys that are kind of, like... passing her around, or vice versa, like, you know, say something, ask if she's okay, try to help her out, or just call the cops and be like, it looks fishy. I mean, in most areas, especially in our town, it's really small, so, like, the cops show up for mostly anything.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're in, like, a different area, maybe they'd be like, that's not a thing we're gonna come look at, but,
or, like there might be more adversarial relationships, obviously, with cops, so it's challenging. But, yeah, usually, like, there's usually no harm in reporting something.
Right.
Because, like... Please. Even for sexual assault, cases that get reported, 230, the actual number of convictions per 1,000 rapes, less than 5 individuals. So it's not like just because you said something happens means that person's automatically going to jail for the rest of their life. Like, you know, they'll do an investigation, make an arrest if necessary, or they'll just be like, oh, it was a misunderstanding. You can let the cops clear that up.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You don't need to make that decision as a bystander.
It's true. Yeah. The other thing I want to say, and we're getting about an hour here, but this was something I was just thinking about, is, like, what if... Okay, so, like, how do you feel about the idea that, like, you have had sexual experiences? What about if you're, like, talking about your sexual experiences with friends or something? Like, is that a violation if your partner isn't like, yeah, you can talk about that?
I mean, I don't know.
Because a lot of times, like, on the show, we're going to use, like, talk about in a vague way. But with your girlfriends, usually detailed. You're just like, oh, this person, he did this and that and this.
And I mean, I can't say I'm not guilty of, like, showing people pictures guys have sent me. Which maybe, I mean, I didn't clear it with them first. So, yeah, I guess I could be guilty of that. I never really thought of it that way. It's a good way to think about it. But I do feel like, I don't know, with experiences, I feel like not so much, because, like, that's my experience, too.
But I guess, what if it's, like, they're talking to you about something, and you're like, oh, this is the kind of stuff that he's into?
Oh, like if a guy told me some like weird thing he did in the past and I like told someone about it?
Yeah, or like a fantasy he had, or
I don't know.
whatever.
I mean, like, I feel like that is probably more situational. Like, it probably depends on the type of relationship you have. Because I feel like if we like just met and you're willing to tell me all of that stuff, maybe it's not that private. But like, if someone said to me, "Please don't tell anyone," then I wouldn't. You know.
Would you really tell no one?
I don't know. It depends. I mean, there's definitely secrets I've kept from every single person I've known
Really?
in my life.
Still?
I mean, yeah,
What are
at
the
some point in my
secrets?
life.
Tell me.
No. But I'm saying, like, there are some people who are incapable of keeping a secret, but others are.
Hello.
So. Like, there's nothing you've never told another person besides, like, whoever you experienced it with or something. I'm sure there is.
I mean, if there might be, but it might just not be interesting.
Well, okay, yeah,
I don't think there's anything, like, that I've never told you because I was like, oh, I don't want her to know about that.
Or, like, that someone asked you not to tell and you didn't tell me. There probably is.
Maybe. I don't know. Probably not.
Okay, so Jess is really bad at keeping secrets, so don't tell her anything unless... I mean, honestly, though, everyone's always like, will tell me something and be like, well, I already told Jess. I assume she told you. And I'm like, oh, okay, she did. You know? But sometimes you don't. If you know they're going to tell me.
Doesn't only Eileen say that, though? Because Eileen always tells me...
No, Mom says it to me, too.
Oh. Well, Eileen always tells me
also
stuff
just, like,
and
ask
says,
me
like,
questions,
you
like-
can tell Renee.
Yeah, well, that's one thing. But, like, sometimes Mom will, like, ask me questions and, like, be like, didn't you talk to Jess? And I'm like, do you think I just, like, have a light? Like, I don't just talk to Jess all day, every day. Like, no, I didn't.
Of.
Not really. Like, especially now that you're busy at work, we, like, don't talk as much. And I'm just, like, also,
we usually
like...
talk, like, at least an
I'm
hour
like,
every
we don't
day.
even live together anymore. So, like, there are times where... Or, like, if you just talked to Jess 30 minutes ago, I probably didn't hear about it yet. Like, you could just tell me, too. It's really weird.
Yeah, well, last night, we were talking about... I went out to dinner with, like, my friends, like 3 of them, and we were talking about this trip that we're planning on taking in December, and then I asked my mom about it, and then I texted Renee about it, and she's like, what are you talking about?
Because she texted me, Mom's gonna pay for us. And I was like, for what? What are you talking about? She's like, oh, for a camping trip. And I'm like, how am I supposed to know that? She does this all the time. So today I'm talking to her. I'm like, how am I supposed to know that? Do you think when you're out, I just listen in on your phone? I'm not the NSA. I don't know what you're doing when I'm not around. And she'll do that too and be like, oh, well, I was thinking it in my brain. And I'm like, how am I supposed to know? Think through your questions fully. Oh, you're so guilty of that. There was something else I was going to say, though.
Also, then Renee sent me a photo because she was returning our book club book from the summer.
This is totally off topic.
I know, but it just reminded me of Mom, okay? It's a little lightheartedness at the end of the episode. So, Renee had the library book, and our mom said, who has the library book? It's due on Friday. Renee said, I have it. Reminds me of a little something else that you had. Anyway, so Renee had it. And she's like, can I return it on Saturday? Because she was going to be at work right by the library. And my mom said, sure.
Which is far from my house. Let me just
it's like,
it's not my town
it's like
library.
30 minutes.
Okay,
anyway,
it's not like it's my library down the
Right,
street,
right,
is what
right,
I'm saying.
She's like, it's fine. I don't mind paying the 20 cents. I just really hate being out of compliance. So she's basically saying she hates that, like, when it's on her name that she returned the library book late. So then Renee sends me a text message, a screenshot of the text message from yesterday that she sent my mom. I paid the late fee plus the 40 cents that you owed from returning this other thing late. But the best thing about the text message was that it was like Renee texting my mom like 10 times and my mom never answering her over the past like 6 months.
It was 3 times, and the first one was a question, which I then called her because I needed an answer to the question, and she hadn't responded, so I got the answer verbally. The second was a text I sent her after we had a phone conversation, and she had said, let me know something, so it didn't require an answer. And then the third one was me teasing her about the fines, and she did text me back.
I just said to Renee, wow, I guess you're just like always texting mom, and she's like never responds.
She like never sees her text apparently. And then I said to Jess, I'm like, maybe she just says that because she wants to ignore me all the time. And she's like, oh, I didn't see that text. So I'm like, okay, sure. Yeah, it's a lot of green on my text with Momly. That's true.
So anyway, what I do if I don't want to seem like uncool, if I want to share a screenshot, is I literally delete the texts. Like, I'll do that. I'll delete.
That makes you more basic, that you take the time to care what someone thinks enough.
I know. It's lame.
Yeah.
But
so
at least I don't look like a loser.
Anyway, so I wasn't entirely done with talking about the topic, though. There's a couple other things I wanted to say.
Is it going to take... I want to just... I think my laundry's done.
Oh, you want to take a commercial break?
Yeah, we'll just take a quick break.
Okay.
Okay, we're back.
Hi. So the last thing we were talking about, I think, was like secret keeping. And I just wanted to say 2 things. One, pretty much I always tell Tim anything people tell me. So that's like one person. And I feel like that's probably true for a lot of husbands and wives, but I don't know if that's really true for everyone. You don't obviously have like a partner, obviously. So, but do you think if you were married, you would tell like your husband all the secrets of your friends?
Probably.
Probably, because like it's the person you talk to pretty much all the time and you live with them and stuff. So, but the other thing I was going to say is something that like, oh, it's weird. It's something that's kind of like messed up regarding like my story of my assault was when I like decided to put it on Facebook. I felt compelled to ask Tim like if he was okay with it. And then I was kind of like, why did I even feel the need? I think it was more of like a, hey, I'm going to like do this, you know, just because it might open up like ugliness, you know, and I didn't want that to be like a shock. I didn't want to just like put something up there and have him read it and be like, oh my God, you know? So I kind of like showed him ahead of time and I was like, I think I'm going to put this up. But then I was kind of like, why am I even feeling the need to ask? But I don't think so much I was like looking for approval. I was more just saying like, hey, here's a heads up. Yeah. But even that too, it was just kind of like, then I was thinking to myself, wow, really? You felt like you needed to ask your husband whether or not you could talk about your own story? So.
Well, I guess because it's a partnership. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like, ultimately, I probably would ask him if I was going to do something like that again. Or, like I said, not really ask, but just kind of, like, notify. Like, hey, here's the thing I'm doing. Here's what it might mean for you. Because I think something like that even, like, that happened to me way before I met Tim.
Yeah.
But, like, that can still be triggering to hear about your partner having been through something painful, you know?
Oh, right.
So,
yeah,
like, that could still be really hard. So that was just, like, an interesting kind of thing that I thought about when I actually put that online.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Kind of reminds me of, like, sometimes when people hear stories about that, like, about their partner, they want to, like, get revenge.
Mm.
And it kind of reminds me, or it, like, speaks upon what you were saying about, like, how you just kind of want the person to, like, be better.
Right.
That's kind of how I am, too. Like, I'm not a vindictive person.
Right.
And, I mean, I've never had anything, like, super horrific happen to me. But, like, anytime I have been wronged by someone, like, I really just genuinely want them to, like, become a better person. To, like, realize what they did is wrong. I don't even need them to apologize to me, but just, like, realize what you did and do better.
Right.
And that's kind of, like, what my hope is for everyone who's, like, done something wrong.
So it's interesting because I just recently watched this miniseries on Netflix called Unbelievable, which was, I think, based on a true story. And basically it's about this girl. It starts off focusing on this girl, and she is attacked in her home. An intruder comes into her home, ties her up, and rapes her. And this girl had a lot of problems in the past. She was a foster kid. She had, like, horrific abuse as, like, a child, bounced around foster homes. So she's, like, got a lot of issues already. So because of this, and then she'd been through a big transition from going out of foster care and into, like, a program in her city that it's called, like, Rise Up or something. And it, like, you know, they give, like, housing and subsidies and counseling to, like, help the transition from foster care. So she had this little apartment and stuff. But then when she talked about this attack, she didn't have all her details straight. Like, she was confused about certain things. She wasn't really forthcoming with certain information. And the detectives who were sent to investigate just basically didn't believe her. Or they were like, this all seems really weird. Like, there's no evidence. Like, there's nothing. And then one of the old foster moms is like, I just want to let you know, like, she's been, like, having a lot of attention-seeking behaviors lately. So then with that in mind, they're like, okay, did she just, like, make this up? And then when she was, like, retelling her story, she, like, confused some of the details or mixed them up. She was, like, tired. She's like, I have a headache. I just want to sleep. You know, but she, like, got things mixed up. So then they were just like, are you lying? Like, what's happening? So she's just like, yeah, I'm lying. And she recanted the story because she didn't want to go through it anymore. Right? So then eventually they actually end up charging her with false reporting. So she gets charged for a crime and she has to pay, like, $500 and, like, do counseling. So she didn't have to go to jail or anything. But in the meantime, they start showing other women in various counties who are telling a similar story of attack. That an intruder came into their home, tied them up and raped them for, like, several hours. And then the detectives who handle those cases are like, well, they both happen to be women. And they're very, like, supportive. They're very good at kind of acknowledging what happened. They believe the victims right away. And they go through, like, all of the investigation. And basically, ultimately what turns out is they were all attacked by the same person. What?
Are we giving a ton of spoilers? Because I was going to watch this.
Yeah, well, here's the spoiler. Well, I feel like you know the spoilers before. It's not really spoilers. But pretty much the girl who the story starts on, that's like one of his early or his first victims, right? So because of the fact that she recanted her story, they didn't necessarily know about her. But then later, when they caught him for raping other women, they found evidence of her assault as well. And then she was believed. And then basically afterwards, you know, she got like a settlement, and she actually went to the police department and she said to them, like, you know, I got this money, I got this, but the thing I haven't gotten is an apology. And she's like, you need to do better. Like, next time this happens, do better, because what you did was wrong. And they're like, they like knew they were wrong. As soon as they obviously saw the evidence that she'd been assaulted, they were like, oh my God, we really messed up. But it's just really sad because it's really hard to come forward with a rape. And something like that is like so traumatic because stranger rapes are really uncommon and home invasions are really uncommon. So that's like an extreme case that someone would come into your home in the middle of the night and like attack you. That's
right.
like very, very, very unusual, which I guess is why maybe these people didn't believe her initially.
Right.
But I know, like, same in Law & Order, like, every time you watch that show, there's always some characters who have doubts, like, about, you know, the victim or the witness or whatever, and, like, Olivia always believes them. She's like, I believe you, and she's always saying, like, to the prosecutor, like, yeah, they're not a perfect victim. Like, they're not perfect. They have problems with promiscuity in the past, or they have, like, they were drinking that night. They're not a perfect victim. But I'm like, but whoever is, you know? And that's, like, what's really messed up. I think that's why so many people don't come forward, because they realize, like, who would believe me? Like, who would think I'm telling the truth? And is it worth it to retell and have people accuse me of lying, like, when I can just try to move on my own?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. But that Netflix series was interesting. It's, like, it's funny because it shows you, like, a lot of the, like, minutia of, like, detective work that usually, you know, those shows don't really show you. Because so much of detective work is, like, just going through boring, detailed information.
Right.
Like, even, like, comparing call logs, or, like, in one they're just, like, cross-referencing for, like, 25 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, that's really boring. But that's, like, where you get people in those tiny little nitty-gritty details. So the detective work was interesting to see. And just the different approaches that the different detectives took to the victims was really interesting as well. And then you see a little bit of the reactions of some of the people. Like, the first victim, she got, like, totally withdrawn, and she, like, lost her job. She was super angry. She would just run away all the time, thought about suicide. And then there was another victim who, like, became really promiscuous afterwards. She's like, I don't even know why. I just, like, slept with these guys. And she's like, but, you know, people process things in all different ways. So it was really interesting. So check that out if you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
If you're into that stuff.
Watch it.
It's pretty good, yeah. It's interesting.
Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
I don't know. I guess just if you have dealt with an assault in the past, even if you don't want to, you know, press charges about it, I think it is valuable to talk about your experiences to someone that you can trust. If you've recently experienced something and, like I said, you think maybe one day you might want to pursue something, definitely speak out. As sad as it is, I feel like you kind of have to teach girls, like, anytime you've been in a situation that makes you feel uncomfortable, write it down or talk to someone immediately. That way they can at least have something to fall back on. Which, like I said, I don't really feel like people should have to prove that they were victims, but, you know, it's kind of unfortunately the world we live in, so
Yeah.
I guess try to be prepared in case that ever happens to you. But also remember, the world is not so dangerous. You know what I mean? Like, yes, bad things happen, and it's true that people are victims, but there's also a lot of good people in the world. So try to find the good people to surround yourself with and to help you. And, you know, you'll get through whatever it is that happened to you.
Yes. I agree.
Anything you have to add?
No, I think I agree with you. I think you should definitely talk about it with someone.
Right.
And if someone discloses to you, just
Believe
be
them.
supportive. Yeah.
Believe them and be supportive, and definitely don't be judgmental. Like, I've even had people after I've disclosed and you know, they kind of come at you with that, like,
What were you wearing?
Well, no, like, why didn't you tell me before?
Oh, right.
How could you have kept this from me? And I'm like, well, this has nothing to do with you. And I'm telling you now. So, like, you know, that's not I don't really personally think that's a very healthy response or a very productive response. Yeah, so I'm like, really, I think just listening, telling them you believe, you know, telling them it's not their fault, whatever. And then asking what you can do to help them, which might be nothing. It might be just listening. It might be, oh yeah, I want to actually take action about this, or I want to become an activist or something, you know? So, but yeah, I think just be supportive however you can.
Yep.
All right, so next week we'll probably come back with something a little lighter. Hopefully this wasn't too much of a downer.
Maybe we'll do our Game of Thrones episode or something. I'm not sure. We have to do the recap.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
And I think people miss JD.
He's pretty fun. All right, so we'll think about that for next time.
So you can check us out on social media, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Deerfoot Sisters. Our website is deerfootsisters.com, or we're on facebook.com/deerfeetpodcast. Let us know any thoughts you guys have, anything you want to share. We love to hear from you. And any other ideas you might have for like future episodes.
Yeah, let us know what else to talk about. All right.